You're still watching The Pulse on the Joy News channel on Multi TV. It's 9 minutes past 4. In the next 50 minutes, these are the deciding moments for the 12 disqualified presidential aspirants who have been given the second chance by the Supreme Court to correct anomalies on their nomination forms when they presented it to the Electoral Commission on the 30th of September. That was just some 2 months ago. Already we've seen it snowball from court issues to today, this window of opportunity that closes in the next 50 minutes. Malik Abbas Dabu, Deputy Head of our Political Desk, is joining me now for some quick analysis on what it has been a very, for want of a better expression, a very crazy day at the EC headquarters for the political parties and their representatives, hopping from one office to the next, running up and down staircases, trying to make up for every lost ground and make it to the ballot box, the ballot paper for the December 7 elections. Malik, good afternoon. Thanks for joining us today. We've seen the drama from 3 p.m. up until this minute. Yep. We have some 50 minutes more to go. But remind us of these 12 candidates and what kind of errors they've been caught in, for which reason they are being given the second window of an opportunity. Okay, so Francis, let's take the core ones. And let's say the most serious one. Let's take the core ones. Yeah. And I'm starting with PPP, Dr. Papa Kwesi Ndum. The problem with Dr. Papa Kwesi Ndum, as the EC told us, was that one, Richard Asida, and remember that when you pick the nomination forms, the electoral laws require that a particular presidential candidate must have their nomination form subscribed to by 2 persons from each district. We have 216 districts. That means that each person must have 432 subscribers. Now, one of those 432 subscribers, Richard Asida, happened to endorse Papa Kwesi Ndum's nomination forms in 2 separate regions. In one district in the central region and another district in the Volta region. So when the EC got the nomination forms, what the commission decided to do was strike out one of those endorsements, and therefore his subscribers fell by 1 person. It was shot by 1 person. So the EC said on the basis of that, he couldn't accept his nomination papers. Let's take Nana Konedo Edmund Rawlings for the National Democratic Party, NDP. Her case was that one Salifu Abdullahi endorsed, was one of the 432 subscribers, but the EC's checks revealed that this Salifu Abdullahi guy had engaged in multiple registration in 2014, and the law says that any person whose name is on the register and attempts to register again is committing an electoral offense, and therefore the person's name should be removed from the register and put in a separate category, that is the delisted category of names. So this Salifu Abdullahi guy, his name was on that list. To that extent, he was not a qualified registered voter and therefore could not have properly subscribed to Nana Konedo's nomination papers. So that was the case with her. In the case of Mahama Hassan Ayariga of the APC, his case was that there were 2 of the 432 subscribers who endorsed his nomination papers. At the same time, these same 2 persons endorsed the nomination papers of the PNC's candidates, Dr. Mahama Nasigri. And the EC decided that, okay, once these persons, because the requirement is that 1 person for each district, 1 person for each district. If you have 2 people endorse you and endorse another person, the EC decided to strike out those persons. In that case, Hassan Ayariga was shot by 2 persons in terms of subscribers. The PNC's candidate, Dr. Edward Mahama, was also shot by two subscribers. So both of them were disqualified on the basis of insufficient numbers of subscribers for their nomination papers, on the basis of the striking out of those 2 subscribers. So that was the case for both of them. So Hassan Ayariga has a certain mirror image of the problem that Edward Mahama has. So the 2 of them were also disqualified. Those are the core ones. So the case went to court. We know what happened. The High Court gave its judgment on the case that was brought by Dr. Papa Kwesi Ndum of the PPP. The court argued that Dr. Ndum had a right to be heard, his right to natural justice, and his lawyer, Aikoyotu, argued that the rules of natural justice requires that you cannot condemn a man until you have heard him. So if the EC wanted, EC should have heard Papa Kwesi Ndum. And in fact, EC's own regulations, Regulation 92 of CI 94,
says that if a person submits their nomination papers and errors are found out, the EC has an obligation to invite them to make amendments to their errors. And the EC didn't do that. So to that extent, the rules of natural justice, he argued, were breached. So he went to court. The High Court gave his ruling and said that he agreed that the rules of natural justice were breached, and to that extent, Papa Kwesi Ndum should be allowed to make amendments and alterations on his nomination papers as required by the EC's own regulations. The EC was dissatisfied with this ruling, and it was essentially looking at three things. The EC's argument was, first of all, the judge, in coming to this conclusion, had argued that the EC failed to set up nomination period. Because remember, in the EC's defense to Dr. Papa Kwesi Ndum's case, it said that, well, we agree that the CI says we should call you to make amendments to your nomination papers. But the law also says within the nomination period, when you submitted your nomination papers on 30th September 2016, afterwards, we could not have invited you to make any amendments because that would have been outside the nomination period. That would have been acting illegally. The judge disagreed. His case was, you didn't set nomination period. If you didn't set nomination period, you couldn't have argued that somebody's forms were submitted and that inviting the person would have been outside the nomination period. You didn't set one in the first place, so there wouldn't have been any point of inviting the person outside the nomination period. So go and allow them to do their thing. The EC's case is that this was an error on the part of the judge. And the reason is that in Ayikwe Otu's pleadings before the court, he actually stated that the EC set nomination period. So how is it that the person who is bringing their case before you say the EC set nomination period, and you, the judge, now say the EC did not set one? So the EC went to the Supreme Court saying that there was an error on the face of the record, that the judge erred when he came to this conclusion, so the Supreme Court should quash that decision. There was a second grounds upon which the EC went to the Supreme Court, and that was that there was a wrong assumption of jurisdiction by the High Court. And the case simply was that the EC argued that Papa Kwesi Ndum should have gone to court via a petition and not a certiorari. That is not a judicial review. A judicial review simply says, if an administrative body, say if you, Francis, should apply to the person in charge of issuing of passports, and they deny you the passport without an explanation, you can go to court and say, this passport office is an administrative body. They took a decision which was unfair to you. You want the court to order them to go back and take the decision again, and this time giving you the right to a fair hearing. So that was one of their arguments. EC disagreed. EC says you can come to court, but you have to come by petition.
And not by judicial review.
And not by judicial review. And the law says before you can even come by the petition, you must come after the elections.
Okay.
The judge disagreed and said it was right that they came by petition. They came by judicial review. The EC was not convinced. So one of the grounds upon which it went to the Supreme Court was that the EC wrongly assumed that it could hear this matter when the people came by judicial review instead of a petition. The court disagreed and dismissed that one too. So on both courts, on the score of wrongful assumption of jurisdiction, the court dismissed the case. On the case of also that, look, there was no nomination period, said that there was error on the face of it, the court agreed, but said that this error does not go to the root of the matter. The root of the matter was fair hearing. So the error on the face of the record that a nomination period was set does not go to the root of the matter of fair hearing. And therefore, even though we agree with you, we will not quash the High Court's ruling because of this. There was a third leg, which was the leg that they got. And this leg was essentially saying that, look, the EC exceeded, the High Court exceeded its powers when it ordered that the EC should allow Ndum to amend his nomination papers. The High Court agreed. The Supreme Court agreed and said, yes, we agree. The High Court has the authority to say you were wrong in not allowing Ndum fair hearing.
And it ends there.
And it ends there. The court should not have gone ahead to order the EC to allow Ndum to amend his papers.
Okay.
The court then says that we, the Supreme Court, exercising our supervisory jurisdiction over all the courts, quash that aspect of the judgment. But we are going ahead to say the EC should allow all the other parties whom it disqualified without a fair hearing, it should give them a fair hearing. They further ordered that now allow them time to amend the errors that were on their papers where necessary. And you should do this in 24 hours because we are having regards to the fact that we are 30 days to the election. The law requires that they should have issued notice of poll 30 days to the election. So knowing this and having this information at the back of their minds, the Supreme Court judges decided that they should do this within 24 hours, that's today, so that the EC can issue its notice of poll.
And that is what we're looking at today. That's what the 12 ladies and gentlemen are taking advantage of today. Between now and 5 p.m., they will have that chance to correct anomalies on their forms, present them, and hope that there will be no other mistakes found in the form so they can make it onto the ballot paper for the December 7 elections. But Malik, as we wait and get you some more updates from the EC headquarters, and remember, we will be keeping an eye there, bringing you some more details. We're learning that there's been some movement of party officials from the conference room of the Electoral Commission to other offices in the EC premises. We'll bring you some details in just a moment. Joseph Akable will join us in just a minute for that. But Malik, what do you make of what things have been today, how things have panned out, especially in the last 1 hour?
Well, we know that the most controversial part of all of this has been the fact that the EC has, after the Supreme Court gave its judgment yesterday, its ruling yesterday, the EC now has identified more errors on the nomination papers of the various political parties, and the parties are arguing this is not fair. In the PPP's case, for example, we know that 85 errors, according to the EC, have been identified on 104 sheets of the nomination papers. We just heard the communications director of the party, Kopako Akon, saying, well, their lawyer's argument was that the matter that the EC brought our attention to was Richard Aseda. And so when the Supreme Court gave its ruling, ordering the EC to give us the right to go and amend this, it was just Richard Aseda we're going to replace in one district. Because the EC has accepted his endorsement in one district. So we are going to get somebody to replace him in the other district. But this guy is saying, well, they don't want to take chances, and it makes sense that, look, we have decided to take care of all of the 85 issues that the EC has subsequently raised, regardless of what arguments the judges, the lawyers are making. We don't want to leave anything to chance. We have dealt with all of those matters, and we are here to submit the forms. I think that they recognize that whilst the legal arguments, the law may be on their side, time is not on their side, because if the deadline passes and the Supreme Court comes to the conclusion that, well, you have a case but the deadline has passed, we have to move on, they lose. So
they are dealing with this on two legs.
On two legs.
The element of time and the element of the law,
Absolutely.
the legal proceedings that they need to handle with this one.
Right, and so time is not on their side. They don't have any time at all. So they don't want to leave anything to chance and say, let's go through the legal route and go back to the Supreme Court and seek a clarification of the court's judgment, by which time the deadline would have passed. And if you go to the Supreme Court and the court says, well, if the EC identify more errors, you have to correct them, you would not have corrected them. The deadline set by the Supreme Court itself would have elapsed and you'll be out. So I think they took a rather proactive decision and decided that let's attend to all the problems, 85 of them, on 105 sheets of the nomination papers. Tackle every one of them and deal with them and submit it. Whatever the legal arguments are, you can make that later. And I think it's a proactive decision on their part.
Okay.
We haven't heard Hassan Ayarga of the ACP.
As yet.
As yet. It's unclear what his decision is, but listening to the general secretary of his party early on, he was so frustrated. It's possible that they may just throw in the towel and decide to let this go. It is also possible that they are also running around helter-skelter. Given the time that we have, it looks less likely that they may be able to satisfy all the conditions that are required in order for them to file.
One thing is clear, though, that in this moment, with some 30, well, about, just to calculate, and you can't forgive me with the maths, about 37 minutes now that the parties have to beat that deadline. That will be tough but they will go through it. And every second will count between now and 5 p.m. when the EC will say, well, we're closed for business. Those who made it, they made it. Those who didn't, well, sorry, better luck next time. We'll see what happens. And we'll try and raise Joseph Akable on the line in just a moment to give us an update on what's been happening. We're learning that many of the aspirants have been trooping in to the Electoral Commission in the last hour to go before 5 p.m. But Malik, what other things have you picked up with
we
this?
Saw what Drew did, didn't we?
Yes, we did.
And Joseph was talking to him. He's now bringing his filing fees, and I think he's carrying a check instead of a banker's draft.
Yeah.
And he's now coming to pick his copy of the nomination forms.
Looks like time has not been kind to him.
No, it doesn't look like time is on his side. I think he will be out.
While we keep an eye on developments here in the country, and as I mentioned, we'll head to the EC headquarters in just a moment to bring you some details. There's also a very important event happening today. As you may know, in the United States of America, they are deciding today through the ballot who will be their next president for the next 4 years. It has been a very interesting months of debate, campaign, mudslinging, rancor, divisiveness in the United States of America. So we'll touch base with Evans Mensah, and he is in Iowa City monitoring the elections for us. We'll bring an update here on the show. But it's time to check out what's happening at the Electoral Commission headquarters. There is a development. Well, in the last 10 minutes, we're learning that a political party has been able to make it past filing his forms after making corrections in his nomination forms. We'll bring you the details in just a moment. We're learning that the Progressive People's Party has been able to go through successfully in correcting errors in their nomination forms. We'll bring you the details and speak to Joseph Akable in just a moment. He's our man at the Electoral Commission at the conference room with the details for us. We'll speak to him in just a moment. We know that the process has been one that has been tiresome, especially for these parties preparing from yesterday when the Supreme Court handed down the ruling at about 11:30 a.m. From that moment up until this minute, it has been a run from their headquarters to the EC headquarters, trying to get their nomination forms first, go through it, ensure that there are no mistakes in the forms, and then they come back to submit it. The PPP is not the only party seeking to have their presidential aspirants on the ballot paper come December 7. There are others. There are 11 others who are equally competing for spaces on the ballot paper for the December 7 elections. We'll bring you the details in just a moment. But if you're just joining us, news we're picking up from the Electoral Commission is that the Progressive People's Party has been able to successfully finish correcting mistakes on their nomination forms and have been able to submit the forms to the Electoral Commission. We'll bring you those details when Joseph Akable joins us in just a moment with the details.